Elsie Jensen here. Today we are going to make a shrimp and sausage gumbo with some rice and some pumpkin apple crumb muffins. So let's start by rinsing up our rice so that it can start cooking, and then we'll work on the roux for our gumbo and start working on our muffins. So I'm going to give my rice a quick rinse. I have 1.5 cups of jasmine rice here. That we're going to cook up because you ladle your gumbo over the rice. There we go. So give it a good shake out. And then I have 2 1/4 cup of water in my pan that we'll be cooking the rice in. So just a basic way to cook rice. Let me grab a spoon to give it a little bit of stir. I'm going to heat this up on high, and once it comes to a nice rolling boil, I will know that it's ready to put the lid on and bring its temperature down. Okay. So while we are waiting for that, we are going to get our roux going. So I'm going to start and this is going to make the base of our gumbo, kind of the nice, thicken it up with it. We are going to melt a 1/4 cup of butter in here over just like a medium heat. And then we're going to add in our flour and we're going to whisk it and cook it. Now, we're going to be cooking the flour and the butter while whisking it together for a good time until it gets a nice, rich brown color. That's what's going to give that gumbo its nice kind of brown base to it. So once my butter is melted, we're going to add in a 1/4 cup of flour. So let's get that. And we'll start prepping up our muffins while we wait. Okay, we are going to be making a pumpkin applesauce crumb muffin. And it does have sourdough in it. We're going to start with a 1/2 cup of sourdough discard.
Does that make it gut healthy?
Makes it gut healthy. So a 1/2 cup of our discard. So I discarded this this morning when I fed up my when I fed my starters so that I got to make several loaves. I'm making 2 for some family that's coming in tomorrow, and then I'm making 3 for a friend on Saturday. So I'm going to be whipping out a lot of sourdough this weekend. So I've got my 1/2 cup of my sourdough discard. Now we're going to add in about, you want to essentially do 1/2 and 1/2 or 2/3 and 1/3. So I'm going to do roughly, because I have 2/3 of pumpkin and then 1/3 of applesauce, but you can do 1/2 and 1/2. They both work really well for this. Let me grab a spoon. And the apple just gives it a nice kind of slightly kind of tart flavor to the pumpkin bread. It's like just nice. It's slightly different, but I love it. And it's a great way if you use part of your pumpkin, but you don't have a full cup left, you can kind of make pumpkin bread with it, but with slightly different. You could also add in some diced up apples if you wanted, but my kids prefer it just to keep it with the applesauce. So I'm going to squeeze in, and you can do cinnamon applesauce if you want, or just plain, but you want enough to make a cup of the 2 mixtures of it together. So let's mix our applesauce and our pumpkin together with our sourdough discard. Here we go. And then we're going to add in a 1/4 cup of melted butter. And I'm going to go check over here. It looks like our butter is melting nice over here. So we'll mix that in. I'm going to turn this down now nice and low around a 4. And we're going to add in about a 1/4 cup of flour. So you're kind of using equal parts flour and butter to make our roux. There we go. And we're going to whisk it together. And this is going, again, to make the base for our gumbo. Might add just a pinch more.
And you have a question? You are going to cook tomorrow in Custom?
I feel like I will at least cook for part of it in costume, or at least show you. We'll see how manageable it'd be. I have like a little duck beak on there. So I don't know. I'll try. Luckily, it doesn't go over my mouth. It just goes over my nose. Okay, so here we've got our flour and our butter cooking together. Now turn it down nice and low. And what we're going to do is we're just going to whisk it every so often. You don't want it to burn, so keep it pretty down low. You don't want it too high. And I'm just going to stir it every so often while we are making our lovely muffins. I'm going to turn it down just to about a 2. We'll know that our roux is ready when it has a nice brown color to it. That's going to give this just the wonderful flavor. Let's add in our 2 eggs. So we just put in a 1/4 cup of melted butter. We're going to add in our 2 eggs. And I'm going to go grab my brown sugar. Apparently, I forgot to set my brown sugar out. Silly me. Let me go grab it. Okay. We're going to put in a whole cup of brown sugar. Just give this a nice little stir. You want to kind of stir it frequently, but you don't have to stir it constantly. So 1 whole cup of brown sugar. Now we will be using a little bit more brown sugar in our crumb topping. But this is where that really delicious flavor is going to come in for the muffin. And then I'm going to give my rice a quick stir as well, because you want to kind of stir that frequently so you don't have any that is like stuck to the bottom of the pan. There we go. Look at this, multitasking here. Okay, let's mix in our eggs, our butter, and our sugar into our applesauce discard and pumpkin base. And then we're going to add in our pumpkin pie spice, salt, vanilla, and baking soda. Now is the time, though, before we add the flour in, make sure you get that egg all mixed up. You can always use a hand mixer if you want. I always say use caution when you're adding the flour so you don't over mix it, so your muffin stays nice and soft versus stiff. Okay. Let's get our spices going. We're going to do a 1/2 teaspoon of salt.
Yo has a question for you.
What's for dinner tonight? We're going to use a beef chuck roast, and and sourdough. That's all I can tell you. I have no idea what that beef chuck roast is going to turn into, but it will be delicious. 1 teaspoon of baking soda. 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. And then 1 heaping tablespoon of pumpkin pie spice. There we go. And that's going to add all of that great flavor to it. Let me give this again a nice little whisk here for it. Here. You just want to stir it enough so it doesn't burn on your pan. But it takes getting to that brown color. It's kind of like, making brown butter or caramelizing. It can take up to between 10 and 15 minutes or so to get to it. That's why I'm always like, prep something else. You can prep up your vegetables in the process so you're not just sitting at a pot stirring and waiting and waiting and waiting. Okay, we've got our spices, our baking soda, and our salt, vanilla, all that stuff mixed in. Now we're going to add in our flour, and we just need 1 cup of flour. And then when we mix it in, we just need to be careful not to over mix it, because again, over mixing will lead to a stiffer muffin. Here we go. 1 cup of flour. And we're going to mix these guys up. We'll do a little kind of double mix. Here we go. And again, you can use that hand mixer. I just don't over mix it. We're going to mix until just that flour, the white flour powdery part is gone. You want it to be nice and lumpy and chunky. Those are going to make it nice and fluffy.
We have a question. Will you be doing a lunch tomorrow?
We will be doing a lunch tomorrow, but no dinner. As in, we'll be trick-or-treating and all that jazz. Okay, I'm giving my rice a stir. We have a nice, lovely boil on it. So I'm going to start turning that down to low, and we're going to let that steam cook. We're going to give our roux a nice little stir. I'm just going to make sure I push all this stuff down so it can sit on that heat and kind of cook up and turn that nice color. So here's our chunky, lumpy batter for our pumpkin win. Again, don't mix it. Resist the urge to make it smooth. That will just make it a firm end product to it. Okay, let's add in our butter now. We're making the crumb topping here. We've got 1/4 cup of melted butter. And then we're going to add 1/3 cup of brown sugar. And we're going to mix the sugar and the water spices. We're going to mix these together first, and then we'll add in our flour. That way they get mixed in well. So 1/3 cup of brown sugar. You grab a spoon, and we'll add in 1/2 teaspoon of pumpkin pie spice. You could also use straight up cinnamon if you wanted to. Pumpkin pie will give you a little bit more of that fall flavor. There we go. Just 1/2 teaspoon. You don't need a lot because the muffins are already going to have a lot, but I do like to add just a little bit on there. We're going to mix this until we've kind of got a sugar paste forming, and then we will mix in our flour. And this is going to make our crumb topping on our muffins. And we're going to add around 1/2 cup of flour. You could use a little bit. You might take a little bit more, like a tablespoon or so more. I always just do it based on how the texture is. So we'll start out with 1/2 cup. And we're going to mix this together until we want a crumb that forms that will hold together when you pinch it, but falls apart. We don't want to have super big chunks or it be too pasty. But you also don't want it too powdery. So you want to find that happy medium to it. And I find once you get it kind of mixed together, using your fingers to kind of pinch it and work it goes a lot faster. So here is our beautiful crumb. So it's enough where if you hold it, it will stay together, but it crumbles apart. That's the texture you want. I always say aim more for the texture than the look or than the measurement. Let's give our things, yes, we can see it's already starting to get, it's kind of turned a light brown color. So we're getting there almost to it. Let's put our muffins out. We'll build these up and pop them in the oven. I was like, oh, I've got to make, I made pumpkin muffins earlier this week and they barely made it to the next day. And the kids don't have school tomorrow. So I was like, oh, I'm going to make sure I have muffins ready so that they have something to feed themselves when they first wake up. Okay, we're going to spoon our mixture into our little muffin liners. I'm going to first put just 1 spoon in each one, and then we'll go back over and line it up. But the lovely part about using the mixture of the applesauce and the pumpkin, it's going to make these muffins just a little bit lighter than a traditional pumpkin muffin or pumpkin bread. Pumpkin bread is typically, pretty dense. This just lightens it up just a little bit. And of course, it gives you that kind of apple little aroma flavor to it.
You have a question? What's in the roux?
The roux right now is just a 1/4 cup of butter with about a 1/4 cup of flour that we've been cooking over, medium-low heat. And we're just going to keep stirring it here periodically. We'll go back over, but I want to give this a good stir until it has this nice, rich brown color. So you're simply like caramelizing that butter and that flour together, or making like a brown butter in there essentially. And that's going to give you all this great nutty flavor to your gumbo. Okay, we're going to add in our muffin, finish up topping them off, and then we are going to put our crumb topping on top of them so that they have this just nice little pop of crumb on it. Here we go. So we'll slide this here and finish evening them out. Perfect. Just a few more scoops. These are going to bake at 350 in the oven for about 20 minutes. Sometimes they can take, I will say, with the streusel, they're going to take probably 22. They take a little bit more with the streusel on there. Looks like Jackie just fell back asleep. He's in nap time right now. But I swear, anytime the dogs bark or a car goes out, he always wakes up. He's got a nice big window that looks out right in the front of our house, but everything wakes him up. There you go. Okay, but he'll be happy. He'll have muffins when he wakes up, so that will be a good one. Okay, we're going to put our crumb topping on here. And you're just going to start with a little on each one, and then we'll come back over, even it, because you don't want to end up with none when you get to your final muffin. So just go with a little and then even it back out. Here we go. You see we've got some nice good size crumbs. That's where you want to make sure you don't put too much flour in it, or then you just have kind of that powdery crumb mixture. And right over the top. And again, we added about a half a teaspoon of our pumpkin pie spice in there. So it's going to have a nice, lovely flavor to it. Now, because regular pumpkin muffins are going to cook 20 minutes, because I added the streusel topping, just think of the streusel topping as like a little coat. It's like a little insulator. And so it's going to cause the muffins to take a little bit longer to bake out, just because they can't rise up quite as fast. There's a little bit more weight underneath it. So let's go pop these in the oven. I'm going to give my quick stir, and then we'll start prepping up our veggies for our gumbo. So our pumpkin applesauce muffins with a lovely crumb topping are heading in at 350. And with the streusel topping on there, I'm going to set my timer for 22 minutes because I know it's going to take longer. Here we go. And let's work on our gumbo. I'm going to give my hands a quick rinse, but we can start prepping up our veggies while our roux is starting to get a nice brown color to it. Okay, and now that I'm over here and can be a little bit more consistent, I'm going to turn it up to about a 3 now, so just a little notch higher on there, but low and slow works great for this. And it'll give me time to prep up our veggies. So one thing that's a little bit different about gumbos versus like other soups and stew is you are actually going to saute your veggies up in the roux. So it's just a little bit different method, but it adds so much flavor to that soup base, the gumbo base. So we're going to use one big kind of yellow onion, and we're going to dice it up nice and small on here. There we go. And that way you just have nice little bitty pieces, because we are going to be serving this. It's going to be, a lovely base that we serve over rice. And I don't want to have super huge chunks of onions because I want the okra and some of the other veggies. There's so many in there that you kind of want them all to work together and shine instead of overpower. There we go. Let's give this again a nice little stir. It is starting to get a little bit darker, everyone. It's so hard to tell. Sometimes I feel like you're watching, a pot of water boil. That's kind of how slow it takes, but it is worth it. Let's toss that a little bit. And then we have a couple peppers that we're going to be adding in there. I've got one that I picked from my garden, as well as some sweet peppers and some celery. So let me get our celery. I'm going to kind of just take off my bottoms here. I'm going to leave my leaves on because that adds just a lot of great flavor. The celery leaves have a lot of that celery flavor, just a little bit more delicate. So we're going to keep them in here. I'm going to cut each of my celery stalks right down the middle so that when I dice them up, they'll be nice smaller pieces, not, the big half circles that you typically see. Let's give this. There we go. Beautiful. And we're going to dice these up. Then we'll get our peppers diced and some garlic diced up. And we have okra. Now we have a whole collection of spices that we're going to be using today because there's just a lot of flavors that go together to make a gumbo just delicious. We have some cumin, coriander, Italian spices, thyme, oregano, and bay leaves and black pepper. And a little bit of onion powder. And those are just going to add just great flavors to the whole base of it. There we go. So we've got our celery with our celery leaves in there. That adds a bunch of flavor. Give this a nice stir here. I'm going to notch it up just a little bit now to about a 4. And we're going to cut up. This is my little green pepper in from my garden. They're all like super cute. So throw those in there. I will say these ones they were supposed to be purple and they never turned. And I don't think they were actually purple pepper plants, but they have such a great crunch to them. They're just so nice and crisp that they're just really lovely. So we're going to dice those up again. Slightly bigger than the onions, but not, again, too big. So I've got that one, and then I have just a big handful of some sweet peppers as well. Oh, it looks like we just went up another shade, slightly darker. Now it's kind of got like a, cappuccino color to it. And get our next peppers. For our meat base in here, we've got shrimp and we've got andouille sausage. So just a nice smoked kind of Cajun sausage that goes really, really well with this on here. You can also throw in, there's so many different things you can throw in, but chicken works well in here. You can throw in, like if you have crawfish meat, those work well. I feel like with it, you can just do so many different flavors. It just is, it's just like a very versatile dish. Okay. I think I'll save my last little sweet pepper here because I think I'm going to be good with just those. Oh, I forgot to pick some fresh parsley at the very end to kind of top it off with a little bit of fresh herbs. Okay. We are getting to this lovely coloring. I'm going to now do it up just a smidge. Again, start lower and work your way. Once you kind of get into this nice rhythm, you'll know it. I will say it takes forever to get through that first initial stage of turning to the nice color, but then when you get there, it steps up a lot faster. Okay, I realized I forgot to grab my garlic out of the fridge. So let me grab my garlic here and we'll be able to mince that up for just a second. So with this, I'm going to do about, let me see, reach in and I'll tell you what it looks like. About 4 good-sized cloves, so a tablespoon. These are massive, so these ones are like 2. But I want about a tablespoon of fresh minced up garlic in here. Oh, beautiful. It's got a nice honey almost color. We are getting there. Okay, let's mince these up. That way, when we're ready, we'll be able to put most of this stuff in there pretty quickly. So you can definitely use garlic in here if you want. I will say fresh garlic does have a slightly nicer flavor to it. Not quite as acidic, but if I always say this is a side piece, so you can definitely use garlic instead of fresh on there, and it's not going to make too much of a difference. Okay, let's get this nice. And then we also have okra, which is a big staple in our gumbo, but we'll start cutting that up once we get our vegetables, our nice saute vegetables going. Here we go. You can see how we're getting such a nice color to it now. It's getting darker and darker. It's getting wonderful. We're almost there. I'm going to turn it up just a smidge. We'll get it there. And this is the base to it. There are some people who will cook it till it's so nice. The darker brown you get, more of that earthy flavor you're going to get into your gumbo, that nuttiness to it on there. So don't try to like skip it and go, too blonde of it. Definitely take your time to wait for it, especially since you've got lots of prep to get there anyways. Okay. Give this a few little snaps. And then we'll be ready to toss in our onions and our celery, kind of cook up. Then we'll put in our peppers. Onions and celery can take a little bit of more heat longer, and they'll let out their flavors here. But this is looking pretty good. I think I'm going to use around this color. This is a nice kind of caramel color to it. You can definitely cook it a little bit later for it in there. But then we'll put our onions and our celery in here. Then we'll add in our peppers, and once we get our base to, we'll add in our okra and our tomatoes, but those are more delicate ones that won't take the heat as well. So if you add these in, they're actually going to sizzle quite nicely. So I'm going to do my onions and my just a hot second first, then we'll throw our celery in and give this a nice little mix around. And it's going to coat up those onions, and it's just going to make it lovely. I have it cooking over about a 4, so it's not too high, but it just has this nice, lovely scent to it. But sauteing your veggies in that roux is just going to make that base for it so lovely. Grab our spatula here. Here we go. I wanted just to coat those onions up. Let them get a little bit of love.
You have a question? How much butter and flour for the roux?
So I just used a 4th cup of butter, a 4th cup of butter with a 4th cup of flour. This is a smaller batch. If you're making a bigger batch of gumbo, yes, you would use, more, you kind of double, but it's about half and half on it. I think I might have added a little pinch more. I just kind of look that I don't have too much liquid, like oils left out. So you want a good base, but typically half, like equal amounts, like of butter and flour. Okay, let's add in our celery. And then we'll add in our garlic next. We'll let these kind of just saute in that base. And when we add in our chicken broth and our tomatoes later, that's going to be the liquid part for our soup, and it's going to add just so much flavor, or so much like soupiness to it, and it will bring all those flavors together. Man overboard. Okay, while we're waiting for those to get a little bit of a saute on them, let me slide this here. We're going to add our okra. We'll just get it diced up and ready to add in. With okra, you're going to cut off the tops and the bottoms and then slice up the middle. You can use frozen okra if you want to. Both are great options on here. You're just going to slice them up. I always want to take off these little tops first. And then we'll have our little base here. But pretty good size ones, because, If you cut them too small, they'll fall apart. So you don't want them to, and you don't want them too large where you have just really big pieces of okra. Let's give our things a nice little stir here. These are always fun to cut. If you've never worked with okra, it's a little bit fuzzy on the outside. And typically like fried okra is very, very common here in the South. I always say okra has a little bit of a slimier texture on the inside, which is why I like it in gumbo more than I like it fried, because it just blends well with the gumbo texture. There we go. Get these guys. And then we'll get our peppers and our garlic going into there to saute up. But I did want the onions and the celery to have a little bit more because they are a slightly firmer vegetable, which means they take a little bit longer to kind of cook up and let their flavors out. Here. Let's give this a nice stir. And then I'm just going to slide and we're going to add our garlic in. And this again is about a tablespoon of minced up garlic. And this is going to add such a nice, lovely, like garlicky aroma to it, but the smell, garlic is just wonderful. It smells so good. Okay, let's finish up chopping up the rest of these guys in here. And, ooh, hello. Since our sausage is pre-cooked, we don't have to worry about cooking that up front. But if you wanted to use like a fresh, like an Italian sausage, you could always use that in a pinch. You would throw it in now to kind of saute with your roux. We'll add it in here in a little bit to add a little bit of flavor, but you don't have to add it in as soon as if it was the, the raw version. Okay, one more little okra. I would say my parents will be happy. I don't make gumbo often, but they absolutely love it. They always tell a story about how like they went and visited me once in New Orleans, and instead of going to like a Cajun or a Creole place, I was like, let's go to P.F. Chang's. I want Chinese. And they're like, there's a good thing we love you because we went instead of going to a great restaurant. And I was like, yeah, I was young. Okay, let's get our peppers in here. And then once we get our peppers in, we're going to put some spices in here, let it kind of cook up. We'll add our tomatoes and whatnot. But let's get our peppers in here. It smells so lovely. Okay, I'm going to push that all down so it can kind of start to saute. And we're going to get our flavors. I'm going to put 2 bay leaves in. This is kind of 2 and 1 that's half and half. We're going to do about a teaspoon of ground cumin. There we go. Some coriander, which has a little bit of a tart flavor. The actual fresh version is called cilantro. We're going to add in about a half a teaspoon. We're going to add in about a teaspoon of Italian spices. A half a teaspoon of thyme. I said, again, there's a lot of flavors that kind of go into bringing this together, but they work really, really well. And we're going to do a little bit of onion powder. And then I forgot to grab the wrong spice. I need to grab paprika. So let me go grab my paprika. We're going to add in about a teaspoon of paprika. There we go. And then I'm going to use black pepper. Yeah, it's a little shy. I'm going to use about a half a teaspoon of black pepper. If you like your gumbo hot, change that out for some cayenne pepper. but I'm a little bit of a spice baby, so I like it a little bit more mild. We're going to mix this in and let these kind of heat touch those spices and really bring their flavors out before we add in our tomatoes and then our broth. It smells so lovely. Here we go. Okay. Let me dice up. We're going to let that sit for a second. I've got 2 fresh tomatoes, plus we're going to do a can of diced tomatoes with chili peppers in it, essentially your Rotel kind of can in it. But I love using some fresh because I just think it elevates it a little bit. But a can has a bit more juice in it. We're just going to do kind of a rough dice on them. They don't need to be super cubed up. You just want to make sure you don't have any long pieces of the skin uncut, because the skin won't kind of dissolve away. It will just kind of get stringy. Here we go. We're going to add these. Let me give us a good stir first, then we'll add those in. And don't worry if you get little bits stuck on the bottom of your pan when you add in your broth and the tomatoes. Those will all lift up and add great flavor. So we're going to add in our 2 diced up tomatoes. And then, let me get my can. So this is essentially the same thing as Rotel, but it's the can with the diced green chilies in it. Adds a little bit of heat to it, but not too spicy. Now you could always pick the spicy can if you want, but I like either the OG or the mild one. You're going to dump this whole thing with the juice and all. Okay. And then we're going to mix this in here. I'm going to turn mine down to about a 4 now. And we're going to let it kind of thicken up. And it's going to bind with our roux, which is, again, our browned butter and flour. And it's going to form this just lovely, really thick base. And then we'll add in our broth. And then lastly, we'll add in our okra and our shrimp and our smoked sausage. And then it will simmer. Okay. So I'm going to start. I have 4 cups of water, which we'll use with our chicken bouillon, but I'm not necessarily going to use it all. I'm going to stop when I get to the right thickness. But we're going to first just add in 1 cup, and then we're going to mix it around, because as it heats, it will thicken up a little bit more with every liquid to it. It's just like when you're making gravy. You make a roux base for your gravy, and then you add your liquid in, and it thickens up as it heats. So the same thing is going on here. Here we go. Add a little bit more. And right now I'm just using water, but I'm going to add a nice scoop of chicken bouillon for this. You could also just use straight up chicken broth. You know what? I might add just a pinch more. So I used about 3 cups of water for it, so about 3 cups of broth, because again, you don't want it to be super runny. You want it to have a nice thickness to it. I'm going to turn it up and let it simmer. We are going to add in our chicken bouillon here, and then we'll start adding in our okra and our shrimp, and then I'll cut up our sausage, and there we go. Then we just have to wait for it to simmer up and cook, which is perfect because our muffins are almost done here. And shrimp does not need very long to cook once we've got in here. So we want a nice big heaping spoonful. This is going to season up our whole gumbo. So give it a nice mix. There we go. And now I'm going to give it a quick little taste. Make sure we have all of our spices where we want them. Excellent. Don't need to add anything else. Okay, I'm gonna pop in my okra, and then we'll get our shrimpies in there, and then last our sausage. And I always like to wait till the end to add in, the shrimp so it doesn't get too like rubbery. If you overcook shrimp, it gets a little rubbery. So when you put it in right when you're about ready to eat it, then it'll be lovely. Let's add our okra in here, give it a good stir. And then I'm going to also add in my shrimpies. I've got a whole pound of shrimp. We're going to just add it in here. We're going to let it cook. We'll know the shrimp is done cooking when it goes from gray to pink. It's kind of one of those great things about shrimp. They let you know when they're done. And then we're going to go grab our pumpkin applesauce crumb muffins out of the oven. And then the last thing we'll need to do is chop up our sausage and add it in. And again, that is already pre-cooked.
You have a question? Does the okra get slimy in the soup?
I find that the okra is a lot less slimy in gumbo than it is in like fried okra because you're already in a wet, thicker base. So it blends well. Yes, you still have a little bit of that, but I think it actually works really well in here.
And was the shrimp fresh or frozen?
It was frozen shrimp on there, but not cooked. Let me give it a tap. You know what? These all feel good. They are ready. Always, especially with streusel ones, always give your muffins a little tap. If they bounce in or are a little jelly at the top, keep them in there cooking. They'll dome in or cave in if you don't. So just make sure they have a nice firm top to it. But these beauties, which I'm super excited for, are our wonderful pumpkin applesauce crumb muffins. They have a half a cup of sourdough discard in it. We did about 2/3 cup pumpkin with a 1/3 cup applesauce in there, pumpkin pie spice, and then of course our crumb topping also has pumpkin pie spice in there. So it gives you just a slightly lighter version of a pumpkin muffin with that applesauce in there that just makes it so lovely. Okay. Let's give this a good stir. We already got half those shrimpies already getting there. We got to just cut up our sausage and pop it in. Okay. So I'm just using some good old smoked sausage. The smoked andouille sausage really, I think, adds such a great flavor to this. Slide it out. Now, I always just cut off these top ones where the casing meets and just discard them because those are always so chewy. And then you can cut your flat circle, but if you want to make it look a little bit more bougie, just cut out an edge, and then you've got a slightly bougier cut. There we go. And then we'll pop this in. This is already pre-cooked, so really we just need it to warm up into our soup. And as it sits, it's going to add a little bit of smokiness to the gumbo, which is just going to be wonderful. But the nice thing is, once you get past the making of the roux, gumbo goes a lot faster. Now you can always, the beauty of it is this is a soup that can sit and stew, and those flavors just meld together even better the longer they sit. But you can also have it nice and ready pretty quickly. Okay, about ready to toss this in, and then we'll be serving this over our white rice. So look at that. Our shrimp is pretty much cooked here, and then at the very end we will also put a little bit of our fresh parsley on to garnish it. So I'm going to pop in our sausage, and then we're going to check on our rice, which should be done. Here we go. Now, you can always eat gumbo just as a soup on its own, but it is also delicious served over some nice rice. Here we go. Look how gorgeous that looks. So let me pop our rice over here. We're going to check it. Oh, looks like it's perfect. So I'm going to turn that off. And I'm going to grab a fork and we're going to give it a quick little fluff. I always say fluff your rice just like you do your quinoa, because it allows it to kind of pop together. Don't use a spoon, but lift it up and it keeps it more apart and less stuck together and mushy. Okay, let's get our parsley minced up and our dinner or lunch will be ready, because look, as you can see, all of those shrimp are nice and bright pink and cooked all the way through. That's the beauty of shrimp. They cook so fast. Okay. This is, I went out and picked this from my garden when I grabbed my pepper. And this is just going to add a nice little pop of freshness on our soup. There we go. And I'm going to save just a little bit to garnish on as well, but we'll put some in, and then this can be garnished in our bowls. Okay. Let me just steal a taste, and then I think we'll be ready to plate up. You can see it's got just a nice thickness to it. Delicious. I'm going to turn that guy off. And we're having gumbo, so I'm going to use my little plate here. My bowl, I should say. It's not a plate. I put a little piece of parsley in there. Okay, let me slide these guys out of the way. Got our rice. I'm going to bring this guy right over here. Let me get a ladle. And let me get a bigger spoon for our rice. Okay. For lunch today, we are going to have our gumbo. So first we're going to start out with a nice generous scoop of white rice on the bottom of our bowl. And then we are going to come in with our delicious gumbo, loaded full of shrimp, andouille sausage, okra, peppers, onions. We made a lovely roux using our butter and flour that we then browned until it was nice and golden brown. Sprinkle a little bit of our fresh parsley over the top for it. The spices in here are cumin, coriander, Italian seasoning, paprika, bay leaves. They just have all worked together to make this wonderful dish. And then, of course, we will be serving it with a lovely pumpkin applesauce muffin. And these things, just look how tender it is. How beautiful. When they're hot, they don't peel off the wrappers as well, but look how just soft and moist and delicious they are. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single day, kind of show you what we're making for our friends and family. We do post all of our lives on the link on our page. So if you ever want to recreate any of these recipes at home, you can just go to that and search for what we made. You can also go to the link on our page that has our Amazon storefront that has all of our different cooking gear and gadgets in it. I've got my pots, my pans, my knives, all the different gadgets I use in my kitchen. I have on there for you guys to check out. But again, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe.